Welcome to this explainer. If you're a frontline IT support engineer, you know that feeling. That sudden, massive adrenaline spike when the ticket queue just blows up with red alerts. Servers are down, clients are stressed out, and the clock is literally ticking. You need answers, and you need them right now. Today, we're going to take those core concepts of server infrastructure and transform them into your ultimate diagnostic guide. We're taking a deep dive into Proxmox VE and the fundamentals of virtualization. By the time we wrap this up, you'll have this incredible mental x-ray of your infrastructure that's going to completely change how you troubleshoot forever.
Ah, there it is. The classic, totally stress-inducing ticket. Why won't my virtual machine start? It's vague, it's urgent, and it is staring you down from the very top of your queue. When you're on the front line, a question like this can send you down a massive rabbit hole of logs and error messages, especially if you don't know exactly what you're looking at beneath the surface. To solve this quickly, we really have to understand the foundation that VM is actually built on.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the shift to virtualization. Second, we're going inside Proxmox VE. Third, we'll tackle virtual machines versus containers. And fourth, we'll run through some real-world frontline support scenarios.
Section 1. The shift to virtualization, leaving those physical constraints behind. Now, to truly troubleshoot modern environments, you've got to understand the problem virtualization was actually invented to solve in the first place. Think back to traditional physical infrastructure. Every single application, your web server, your database, your mail server, was tied directly to its own dedicated physical metal box. And here's the crazy part. Those physical servers, they frequently operated at less than 20% of their available capacity. I mean, imagine buying a massive, expensive house and only ever walking into the kitchen. That's what was happening. Organizations were just burning through money on hardware, power, cooling, rack space, while 80% of their computing resources just sat entirely idle. It was a severely inefficient way to operate.
So virtualization swooped in and totally solved those physical limitations. Instead of dedicating one giant physical server to a single workload, virtualization lets multiple independent systems share the exact same physical hardware. It's a real game changer. You dramatically improve resource utilization, you slash hardware and power costs, you can provision a brand new server in minutes instead of, waiting weeks for shipping. Plus, things like backups, recovery, and cloning become incredibly simple, and your scalability just goes right through the roof.
All right, Section 2. Inside Proxmox VE, the engine of virtualization.
Virtualization is a fantastic concept, right? But it needs a seriously powerful engine to actually make it happen in an enterprise environment. And that engine is the hypervisor. Now let's really slow down and lock in on this definition, because the hypervisor is absolutely crucial. It's the ultimate resource allocator. It's the software sitting directly between the bare metal physical hardware and your virtual systems. It's basically the boss. It creates the VMs, it allocates CPU, it hands out memory, manages storage access, and makes sure every single virtual system stays completely isolated from the others. Simply put, without the hypervisor, virtualization just doesn't happen.
Which brings us to the hero of this explainer, Proxmox Virtual Environment, or Proxmox VE. Proxmox is an open-source enterprise virtualization platform, and it's built right on top of Debian Linux. It lets admins manage the whole shebang from a central web-based interface. So why do so many hosting providers and organizations choose it? Well, it delivers massive enterprise-grade features, think clustering, high availability, backup management, but it does it without the incredibly steep commercial licensing costs you see with its competitors.
Moving into Section 3, Virtual Machines versus Containers, the Great Divide.
Now, what's really interesting here is that Proxmox actually combines two completely different virtualization technologies right under one roof. And knowing the difference between them, that is the absolute most critical architectural concept for any support engineer. Think of it like real estate. A KVM virtual machine, well, that's like a standalone house. It has its own foundation, its own plumbing, its own everything, meaning it runs its own complete operating system and is fully isolated. An LXC container, on the flip side, is a lot like an efficient apartment in a shared high-rise building. It doesn't have its own foundation, it just shares the host system's Linux kernel.
Let's look at this comparison a bit more closely. KVM gives you full isolation. You can run Windows, FreeBSD, whatever you want really, because it is completely independent. But because it runs a full OS, it's pretty resource-heavy and much slower to start up. LXC, though, is super lightweight. Because it shares the Linux host kernel, it's highly efficient, starts almost instantly, and uses far fewer resources. The catch? It can only run Linux. So as a support engineer, your diagnostic steps are going to differ wildly depending on whether you're dealing with a heavy-duty isolated KVM house or a super lightweight kernel-sharing LXC apartment.
Okay, Section 4. Frontline support scenarios. Applying this theory to your tickets.
Let's apply all this theory directly to those tickets sitting in your queue right now. Let's jump back to our opening question. The VM will not start. Think of this checklist as your mental diagnostic X-ray. When you see this ticket, you instantly check 4 things. 1. Resource exhaustion. Did the hypervisor actually run out of RAM to allocate? 2. Storage issues. Is the underlying disk unreachable? 3. Configuration errors. Did somebody mess with the hardware settings in the Proxmox interface? And 4. Guest OS corruption. Is the KVM's independent operating system just completely failing to boot? You isolate the layer, and then you find the fix.
Next up on the support queue, my server is running slow. Now, performance complaints are notoriously vague, right? And this brilliantly illustrates why tracing things back to the hypervisor's resource allocation is key. Let's say it's a KVM. Is the guest OS consuming all its allocated CPU? Or maybe the Proxmox host itself is suffering from memory exhaustion, basically starving all the virtual systems. You also got to look out for storage bottlenecks. I mean, if multiple VMs are hammering the exact same physical disk, everything is going to slow down.
Finally, we have storage capacity issues. The host runs out of space, and suddenly, bam, everything grinds to a total halt. Sure, full disks are obvious, but you really have to watch out for the sneaky ways storage gets devoured. Snapshot accumulation is a massive one. If a client takes a snapshot of a VM and just leaves it running for weeks, well, that Delta file just grows and grows, totally eating up your host storage. The exact same thing goes for backup retention problems where those old backups just aren't being automatically cleared out. When you're deep in the trenches of IT support, it is so easy to just focus on the error code right in front of you. But as this reminds us, understanding virtualization fundamentals is exactly how you identify where problems originate. The theory you've just learned, it isn't just textbook fluff. It is your actual secret weapon. Knowing exactly how the hypervisor hands out resources and knowing those fundamental differences between an isolated VM and a shared container, that is exactly what makes you a faster, sharper support engineer.
You see, you're no longer just guessing at symptoms anymore. You are actually diagnosing the architecture. You know how to look at the hypervisor, verify the storage, and understand the very specific needs of KVMs and LXC containers. So when that next high-priority ticket drops into your queue, you're going to be ready. So what will your next diagnostic X-ray reveal? Get out there and conquer that queue. Thanks for learning with us on this explainer.